Welcome to a #BetterHVAC podcast. My name is Ben Reed, and I want to take you on a journey through the chaotic and troubled world of residential HVAC through conversations with industry experts, frontline workers, policymakers, and entrepreneurs. My guest today is Paul Sehr, a Canadian entrepreneur who has recently launched Jouleia, a software service to electrify Canadian homes. Jouleia is bridging the gap between energy advisors and homeowners to create more energy efficient and comfortable spaces. In our conversation, we'll learn about why Paul started Jouleia, explore Jouleia's unique offerings, and draw inspiration from Paul's entrepreneurial journey. Whether you're a homeowner curious about electrification, an HVAC professional, or an entrepreneur seeking insights into sustainable practices, I'm sure you're going to learn something new from our conversation. So let's dive in. All right, Paul. On your LinkedIn profile, you described yourself as a serial entrepreneur. What chose you to become an entrepreneur?
Hey, Ben. Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me on. Great to be here. Ultimately, I do feel entrepreneurship chose me. I just really enjoy the startup environment quite a bit. And I've started a couple of companies, and I really enjoy the creative process of the early days, having to wear many different hats, seeing a big impact your role can make on the overall company, having really tight coupling between everyone's alignment because you only have to talk to a few people to understand what's going on in the next step. And then seeing that thing grow, because I've had a couple scale I've had one scale to a fairly large size as well. Just really having the gratification of creating something out of nothing and seeing that grow into a thriving enterprise. And it's hard, obviously. It's as hard as everyone says it is, and it's a lot of work, but it can also be really rewarding and gratifying if you enjoy that type of challenge where you pretty much have to define your own role and define your goals every day at the beginning as your journey is starting.
Starting a startup from the ground up is very messy, and it takes a very special kind of person that is good at doing it. So it seems like some of the people that I know that are serial entrepreneurs, it's almost like they can't live without kind of that process. The process is just too fulfilling for them that it's hard for them to do anything else.
Exactly. And if that's what you like, it can be frustrating to go work at a much larger company where there's a lot of layers of bureaucracy and your niche is very specialized, and it can just be tougher to see the impact you're making in those organizations, even though you can be reaching a lot more people with the products that you're building at a large organization. So there's trade-offs for sure, but it's exciting to see your day-to-day work get translated so instantly across an organization.
Yeah. Yeah. I like being in small companies too for that same reason.
Mm-hmm.
So the companies that you did before, just so that everybody knows, what was the industries that your other startup experiences were in?
So I've been in tech for 25 years, specifically online. I started with e-commerce back when e-commerce was a very young industry. Did that for about 10 years. And then I dabbled in a few short-lived startups in the early 2010s. And then my last startup was a fintech financial technology company called Finance.it, which actually operated in the home improvement sector. It's Canada's largest point-of-sale home improvement lender. So we would partner with people, say HVAC contractors, who would offer loans at the kitchen table or point of sale. We had mobile apps. It was instant approvals. It was really low friction way to basically offer programs as an HVAC contractor, like 6 months, no payments, 0%, etc. And it's now probably the most successful company at that in the Canadian marketplace. It's called Finance.it. I co-founded that company on the technical side, and I was there for over a decade and recently left because it's doing well and I wanted to get back to my roots and start something small again.
And the inspiration for this something small, it wasn't just that you had some experience with the HVAC sector. It was that you had a personal experience as well. So what was that personal experience that kind of led you to starting Jouleia?
Yeah, so I've always been fairly passionate about doing what I can to leave the planet in a better state than I found it. And obviously, the climate crisis is something that is concerning, and it was something on my mind. I decided, after doing some research, I realized reducing my home's carbon emissions was probably one of the greatest impact things I could do with my time and money. And it's also, you do it and it just keeps on accumulating over years. You don't have to do more on top of that afterwards. So I thought it would be a really good investment and use of my time. And as I started going through the process, I realized that it was just an enormous amount of work and research, and being a fairly motivated person who also had the means, I was finding it hard to understand how anyone else could get through this process with kind of the track that it would take right now. There were so many barriers at every level. And it was so frustrating so often that I knew that I pretty much had to start a business to help other people through this journey so we could get more people, so more people wouldn't have the same experience that I had.
This morning, I just read a LinkedIn article about how I think it's in Finland that heat pump sales are starting to decline. And one of the main reasons being is because of how confusing the landscape is for that type of electrification process, how the government has flip-flopped on policy and incentive programs so often that state of confusion, that disarray, was attributed to be the main factor as to why those heat pump sales were falling. So that just related to what you're saying in all markets, in all of these initiatives from Canada, Europe that I've seen, is that there's a lot of people interested, and yes, we know that it needs to happen, but it is hella confusing. So in the journey of trying to make that transition, like what key factors actually convinced you to do that shift from traditional energy sources to try to electrify your home?
Basically, my motivation was the altruistic climate-based one, paired with the fact that the government was offering rebates and loans. And the government of Canada has had a program since 2019 called Greener Homes that they've been promoting heavily, where you can get $5,000, now $10,000 in grants and rebates. And they also have a $40,000 0% loan paired with that. So the fact that there were those types of incentives plus my motivation to get off gas in my own home kind of paired up. And that's what kind of led me to that decision.
And so let's dive deeper into that journey where you were facing all those frustrations. What were the main challenges during the electrification process? And then how did that translate into what Jouleia has become?
Yeah. So the first frustration does take a bit of time to get signed up for the program.
The Greener Homes program, you mean?
That's right. It did. Yeah. And in that you had to sign up first, and then they would choose an energy auditor, and an energy advisor in Canada is similar to a rater in the US, for people that aren't familiar. And basically they come into your home and they do a couple hour assessment. They do a blower door test. And then they go back and use this kind of, government mandated software to produce a report called an EnerGuide report, which tells you about all the different kind of upgrades that they'd recommend for you and how many gigajoules of energy, that's the unit they use, would be reduced potentially if you perform this upgrade, right? The EnerGuide report was really helpful in highlighting that there was a lot of savings to be had in terms of energy savings. And it was useful to highlight all the different areas to focus on. But unfortunately, it almost raises more questions than you had before. Because now, instead of just wondering about insulation or this or that, now you're like, what do I know about heat pumps? What do I know about basement insulation? What do I know about my roof? How do I do these things properly? They don't tell you what materials you should use, right? Of course. And they don't have any recommendations for contractors, right? So the issue here still is you might, like, I have radiators, for instance, right? And so I have an older house, so it has hydronic heating, and I wanted an air to water heat pump, which I knew existed in Europe. So I had to call maybe 5 or 6 different installers before I found one that even admitted that this technology could possibly exist in Canada. And if I'd been less persistent, I probably would have given up,
as most homeowners probably do.
As most homeowners probably do, right? Because they were just saying emphatically, this does not exist. You cannot do this. Just put mini splits throughout your house instead.
And those are the experts that then the government of Canada assumes are going to be the guides that help the homeowners through the process.
That's right. The most logical people that would be the experts are the energy advisors, right? Because they're the ones assessing your home and giving you this holistic overlook across the envelope and the HVAC system and solar and batteries and everything else that it encompasses, right? They have that holistic look, but the problem is that you try and contact them after you get that initial EnerGuide report, but their margins are not very big on for each home they visit. So they literally cannot afford to talk to you, or they are losing money. Their job is to go in and out of the house as quickly as possible to crank these reports out. And the quicker they do that, they have no incentive to talk to you or help you otherwise. And I'm sure there's many in the industry who would love to help homeowners and walk them through more, but they literally can't afford it, right? So they're not there to help you after they've gone and give you that kind of independent, objective advice.
And I want to just focus on that problem for just a second here. Is what forces them to have that type of business model? Is that something from the government of Canada basically says this is the only way that you can be an energy advisor is to do things this way with this margin and this many calls per day, this many clients per month? Or I don't know if you're familiar with that process.
I'm not super familiar, but they work with an organization called the Service Organization, which is directly affiliated with the government of Canada in terms of, and they're meant to do quality assurance on the files to make sure they're being handled correctly. And they're the ones that submit the files to the government. Mm-hmm. So I believe the pricing arrangement the pricing's become commoditized in Canada. Just about everyone knows what an energy audit should cost. So it's difficult to raise prices to a level where you'll get that info and be able to explain to a customer why you're paying more for some support on the back end, because they don't understand that they're going to need that support on the back end if they want to do something beyond, say, putting in new windows or putting in a bit of attic insulation.
Because there's probably an assumption that then the other experts in the market, like contractors, are supposed to help them with that process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or the energy advisor. That's who I thought.
Yeah.
I had 20 questions for them after I got it back. And a response I got for many of my questions was like, I'm not allowed to suggest contractors to you.
I have to stay neutral.
We have to stay neutral. Yeah.
Oh, that is frustrating. Yeah, I haven't been through the process myself, but I've read lots of news articles on both the kind of the bottleneck of energy advisors, how there's so few of them. And so there probably is a lot of push from the powers that be to keep them doing as many homes as possible. So that's what I would assume. That's one of the reasons why they end up having that very focused process of just trying to check the boxes and move on. But it's really unfortunate that there isn't that support for homeowners. And
and I don't blame any of the professionals. That's just the way the environment has been set up. And if you want to go over and above, you're basically doing so at your own economic
giving it
cost.
away.
Yeah.
Or trying to argue with the homeowner or position yourself with all this extra value add that there isn't any education as to why somebody would need to pay extra for, let's say, a retainer fee or additional consults.
Yeah.
Interesting. And hence Jouleia, right?
That's right. Yes. That was the inspiration. I had just left my previous position and I was taking some time off, and I was very motivated to get into the climate space, but I wanted to use something that would leverage my existing skill set, and I also knew was going to make an impact. And going through this at the time, it all just came together and seemed like just an obvious fit and a fantastic thing to get into.
Yeah. You stumbled across quite the mess that needs solving, and that's usually the best type of startup idea. A personal association with that mess that needs solving.
Exactly.
So what does Jouleia do? What's the mission statement, vision statement, and then what are the benefits to the stakeholders involved?
We're looking to make it easier and faster to electrify homes and at the same time make them more comfortable, make them more healthy, all the benefits that come alongside with envelope and HVAC improvements that are done properly, right? And installed properly. So our mission is to make the whole process simpler from start to finish and help everyone in the industry along the way, homeowners, contractors, and energy advisors.
Okay. And who is the users of Jouleia? Is it both energy advisors and homeowners, or is it just homeowners that use the platform?
Yeah, so we're pretty new. We just launched at the beginning of December, our beta launch. So our beta launch, if you go to our site today, it's targeted to homeowners. We have two main offerings. So we have a free set of tools. You can go today, jouleia.com. And we have free calculators that you could compare for any postal code in Canada, basically, and see the comparison between continuing with your existing heating system if you were to replace it versus buying a heat pump or a heat pump water heater. We have the water heater comparison calculator available as well. So homeowners can immediately educate themselves. A lot of the objections when selling heat pumps is that they cost too much, they're more expensive. And it's true. Obviously, they are more expensive up front, but in most of Canada, based on how efficient they are versus the energy versus natural gas prices, you will find that you're saving money, say 5 years out or 7 years into your investment, that the operational costs are so low. And that's what these calculators are meant to display, while also highlighting and factoring in the rebates that are available to you. Also, as part of our home assessment tool, basically you can go through in 3 minutes, ask 20 questions about your home, and then we'll build a very simple profile of your home, and let automatically what the top things you can do to your house is. We've tried to use user experience similar to what an EnerGuide is, but we're actually giving cost estimates as well, which is a difference. And it comes with guides associated with every upgrade that are meant to be useful and in context. And we've really tried to use user experience to simplify it all. Because one thing that happens when you're going through this, and if you're coming at it with fresh eyes, you're not in the industry, which is most homeowners, it's an overwhelming amount of information. So the more you can simplify it, the more digestible you can make it, the more you can just have some of the keywords hidden behind a mouse over or a link. And so they can learn about it rather than overwhelming them with everything all at once. The better they're going to be able to digest it and then later take action on it.
Yeah, the progressive disclosure method. I like that.
Yeah. I think there's a sizable amount of people that will want to still do their own education, and that's what these tools are for. But then on top of that, we have our home expert service. And our home expert service right now is piloting in the Greater Toronto area. And that is where we are actually fully arranging everything for you. We are going to be arranging for the energy auditor to come into your house. We'll be taking a look at that report. We'll be creating a full modernization plan based on your goals. So if your goal is electrification, we'll help you with that. If your goal is comfort, right? You have some severe comfort issues in your home, and that's what you're more interested in addressing, we will help you with that. If you're really interested in just maximizing your operating costs going forward, we'll take a look at it from that lens as well. So it understands first what your motivations are, and then we'll go ahead and craft a plan and work with it within your budget and highlight all the different financial tips, tricks, assistance that you would need. And then we'll pair you with contractors, right? And then, so what we're building up lists of philosophically aligned contractors in each market. It's a curated list of people who understand what's being done, and we're going to make their lives easier to these contractors, right? We plan on collecting all the information you might need as a contractor for initial visit through the energy auditor when they're in home. So you can skip that first visit, save time and money on your end too. Just get to the quoting. You don't have to sell them on anything. Julia's already sold them philosophically, and you just have to get them your quote with the equipment that you prefer in the specs, which should save you a lot of time and money. And we think these are going to be high intent leads as well for the contractors. So,
and when a homeowner is interfacing with Julia, do you have options for them to speak with an expert in real time, like a chatbot, or be able to give you a call to discuss their issues? Okay.
So the home expert service is we're there to help you through your whole journey. You want to email us or give us a call about anything along the journey, we're there to help you and to answer your questions.
And let's talk about that expertise, because the expertise around home electrification, let's say envelope upgrades, building science, even installing and commissioning heat pumps, there's a huge amount of knowledge and expertise and training in that field. And so that seems to be a fairly large task to undertake, is to say, hey, homeowner, we're going to help you navigate this. It's quite the bit of responsibility. So how is Julia, how did you achieve that expertise? Did you end up hiring somebody or finding a co-founder who is building science oriented? How are you being able to provide that vital yet difficult to acquire expertise to homeowners?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been marinating in building science for a year now since I decided to do this. I didn't know anything about building science going in, but I did build the engine that now runs a recommendation thing, including all the energy calculations from scratch. So I have a good book knowledge of building science now, but book knowledge goes as far as your first house, I think. So I think you'll be relieved to hear that, yes, we have hired someone who's been an energy advisor and is a building scientist now and has been in the industry for 10 plus years in thousands of homes. and really
Good.
knows their stuff. And they're there on the advisory side. We're building a whole team of like-minded experts as the company scales. We also have some of the best building scientists out there, a phone call away. What we're doing, have their own businesses, are busy, but if we need to phone a friend because we've hit a particularly thorny question, they're available for us.
That is so important. And I
It
find that a
is.
lot of the people that have those skill sets are also the ones that are very passionate about bringing the industry forward and are
Mhm.
fairly generous with their time and love to support this type of enterprise. So I'm very glad that you're taking advantage of that phone a friend with all these experts, some of which I probably would know if we wanted to talk names at a different point.
You probably would. You probably
Yeah.
would.
Awesome. So that's great. I'm glad that you have that covered. Let's chat a little bit about EnerGuide, because
Mhm.
it's something where even myself, because I'm not a homeowner who has gone through the process of electrifying or navigating a, let's say, incentive program here in Canada, but I've studied a lot of the programs down in the States. And the Canadian process and program is very different than the US. And so maybe if you could explain the EnerGuide to some degree of detail and that personal experience that you had.
Really, EnerGuide it has a summary page of where your house's rating is now. Again, everything is listed in gigajoules. So it tells you how much they estimate your house uses in gigajoules today and where the benchmark is for the average Canadian home. And then it has a page listing out all the data that was collected, all the R values of your envelope, what your heating and cooling loads are. And pretty much from there, it has the outputs of what in Canada, the software is called Hot 2000. You put all those inputs in there, and what comes out is the recommendations per upgrade. They have another piece of software that actually produces the PDFs, but basically you take those outputs, put them into this other software, and you get the recommendation package. And then the energy advisor puts in their notes below each recommendation. And they might say something like, you can do this, or you can utilize this grant, etc. Take a look at this page. Here's a link to more information on this government website if you want to learn more about your envelope and how to upgrade it, or heat pumps, etc. It's a very information dense PDF package that contains just kind of everything about your home, all the measurements and all the upgrades that they would recommend. And everything is in potential gigajoule reduction in terms of what the payoff would be for any of this stuff.
Right. Yeah. And when you were making Julia, you're kind of getting your hands dirty in code, but you hadn't done that for a while from what you had told me. So what was that process like, going from that role in a larger organization where maybe you have more management or operational role to then going back and getting your hands dirty in code? Did you have to relearn a couple things? Did it come back naturally? Are there like some like really valuable new innovations that you could take advantage of? What are the
I hadn't coded in about 7 years. I'd just been manager slash executive. One thing I'll say is I did reach back into my old toolkit. I've been using Ruby on Rails for about 15 years. That's the programming language framework that I've been using. And after doing some polling with my colleagues, everyone agreed that it's still a very relevant framework and popular. So I was happy to pick it up, dust it off. It's a newer version, obviously, but the fundamentals are still the same. That part, it's a bit rusty at first, the first couple months, but nothing too difficult. I will say some other things have changed a lot. The whole front end is basically the thing that takes the back end code and turns into beautiful web pages. That whole environment has changed quite a bit over the years, and there's been a lot of innovation and progress there. So it was good to learn that. It's actually if you want to get into the programming details, it's much easier to build websites now because the browsers have actually all standardized. It used to be that Internet Explorer used to have its own quirks in this browser. So you had to do all these tricks to make sure it looked good everywhere. And a lot of that's gone away, which is nice for the most part. It saves work. And then on the system side, I will say, like, actually deploying the website, there's some services out there that make it really, like, that used to be all kind of manual craftsmanship.
Yep.
And now it's like hitting 4 buttons, and that part of it's gotten really nice. There's a lot of tool sets now. You got to pay for them to a certain degree, but a lot of things have gotten a lot easier in a lot of ways when you're talking about everything it takes to put together a complex modern website, which is still quite a bit. Like, there's a lot to do to get a site up off the ground. So
Yeah, time is money. And if you're doing it all yourself, then you want to optimize that time as much as possible.
that's right.
And when you were creating the software, integrating some of these calculations, replicating some of the decision-making logic that you find in the EnerGuide, but then probably from elsewhere on the market, you probably had some sources to be able to pull from, to be able to get mostly accurate results when homeowners are putting in all their information. I think you had mentioned that you might be making a couple of assumptions, like with the roof style, being able to calculate the results for homeowners. So let's just specifically talk about that function, because it is very interesting how you can do something like this at scale with software without having to go out on site to be able to do all those types of measurements like a normal energy advisor is. So like there's a trade-off where, let's say, you'll be sacrificing some accuracy to be able to achieve scale, but it's really still important in that sort of front-end decision-making process so that the homeowner at least has something in a simple way so that they can get to the next stage of the decision-making process. What are some of those trade-offs that you would have had to make when building the software?
Yeah. So I mean, again, I think anytime you're building the first version of something, you're leaving a few things on the cutting room floor that you would prefer to have there. But I think it's important to just highlight from a product perspective, I'm not trying to build energy modeling software per se. I'm trying to build something that is good enough that can be deployed. You can get a response and you can generate recommendations very quickly on the fly on the net without having to go back to a third-party piece of software, most of which don't have APIs or aren't easily accessible in terms of a real-time web experience that people are used to nowadays. It's meant to be a quick educational thing for homeowners. It's not meant to be 100% accurate. It's meant to be good enough, right? So that's the goal. And I don't think there's any ambition to ever make it perfect. That's why you go back to those professional pieces of software have been developed by people who have a lot more expertise than me over a long time. But the calculations that we are using, the heat loss calculations, the dimensions, they're all great. We're just making some assumptions about what your house looks like because we're only taking in 14 questions, right? In the future, we do want to be taking in the EnerGuide reports and all the actual R values and measurements in there, so we have a much more accurate picture of the house. Although I think any expert in the building science field will tell you that even those aren't perfect most of the time, that there's some assumptions being made there too. But that's about as good as you're going to get without taking a crowbar to various walls and seeing what's inside, right?
That, I think, fits the state of what the market needs, is that we have a massive volume problem. We have a bottleneck on people being able to make that decision quickly and in a way that they feel comfortable doing. So the good enough approach, I think, is actually very important for this piece of the market. It really, like, homeowners really need that help. And if we wait until there's an organization that has enough resources and time to develop it perfectly, then we're going to be too late, because there's too much work to do, too many homes that need to be electrified. I personally am a big fan of good enough to be able to at least get to the next step.
Yeah, it's meant as educational. And look, there's a lot of great data in there. I am using real-time API data for cooling degree days, heating degree days, like local climate data. We use benchmark software to get benchmark pricing in there. Unfortunately, there's no good automated source, but we're refreshing our pricing across all the different energy types, across all the different provinces every 3 months. There is a fair amount of work to make sure there's enough rigor that it makes sense, right? That it is directional. It's not going to be perfect, but it's pretty close to again, it's good enough, I think, if you're trying to just shop around and learn whether this is worth it or not.
And to enhance your offerings, there's always the opportunity to do partnerships. But I also believe that you had mentioned that you might be doing a marketplace. So what would that marketplace look like?
We honestly, at the end of the day, we see the business we're building with the home expert service that we're offering as a marketplace, because you have homeowners coming in. We have a whole roster of energy advisors who we want to supply with work and perhaps come up with a slightly better business model than is out there right now, because we're able to charge more to the homeowner because we're able to just show them that we're delivering greater value than just get you this report in and out, right? We're articulating greater value for the homeowner, so we're able to charge more to them. And then on the contractor side too, there's a network there. So basically what we're building is a marketplace between all the different parties that are typically involved when you're going through a home electrification or energy efficiency retrofit. And as we expand it across the country, there's going to be a bunch of different benefits that are going to accrue from it, right? And we're going to have, we hope to have lots of partners on the acquisition side as well, basically funneling or getting us a steady supply of homeowners and raising awareness for why these are fantastic investments to make in your property if you're a homeowner.
So what are the most interesting roadmap items that you're willing or able to share over the next couple of years?
I mean, we have lots of intentions, but mostly what we're going to be doing, our roadmap is more going to be informed by since we're so early stage, we know we're going to be building up our operations, being able to track the stages that our different homeowners are in their renovation, build up our networks of contractors and energy advisors. And as for the features, we're mostly going to be listening to the customers and understanding what their biggest blockers are still. Like what aren't they liking? Or for the contractors, are we delivering enough value for what we're charging? Energy advisors as well. Basically, do you feel, for all the parties involved, do you feel you're getting value of being part of this relationship, and then really adjusting based on their feedback in the early days? And if it turns out that customers' feedback is, hey, I have to put out $70,000 for renovations, but I don't get the money from the grant until the end of this process, and that might be 2 years out. Maybe they need some sort of bridge financing, and we have to figure out what that product looks like and make sure that gets in their hands so they can carry out the work in the meantime, right? So that type of stuff. Like there's some things, look, we have some pretty strong guesses as to what we're going to need to round out the offering, but things like, some lending products, etc., to help our homeowners through the process. But those aren't set in stone, because really what we're going to be doing is speaking to them and listening every day, and then choosing what to do next based on like, why aren't you going ahead with this, or what's holding you back still?
I really respect that decision, having been a part of too many startups that have been audacious enough to believe that they can meet, let's say, a predefined roadmap in a early product that is still trying to determine product market fit. So even though it might seem non-committal, your response of how you're going to go about this, I actually think that it's the right way. Your growth plan for this, is there particular channels that you believe that are going to be best for you to utilize to be able to increase adoption with either homeowners or with the energy advisors or contractors that you're going to be interacting with?
Yeah. So look, I mean, we think SEO over time will become important. We have these unique calculators that work for every corner of Canada and give you real-time results. And I don't know of any other solution in Canada like that. There's a couple other that are select cities and have static data from a year ago. They're great, but I'm not sure I know of one as dynamic and real-time as ours at this point. So SEO to get people to understand and highlight what's going on and educate themselves, right? For anyone who's curious about this type of stuff, we're interested obviously in our actual partner networks, maybe them becoming advocates and referring people back to us if they're in homes for a non-Jouleia install and the homeowner has some questions about this or that, and they're like, I can't help you, but here's a company that can. So that those feedback loops, self-reinforcing feedback loops from our entire network, including homeowners, hopefully, who, if they like the process, will refer us. And then we're going to be testing various people out in the marketplace. I think a very interesting development that a lot of people are talking about are basically having energy ratings on your real estate reports, right? And I think the whole real estate industry, it'd be great if they saw the value that obviously comes with having a more comfortable, healthy home and being able to educate homeowners and having that reinforced. Suddenly that makes it really important in the real estate industry to get a handle on this stuff. And we think we can make a big difference there and really increase the resale value of homes. So that would be a great channel as well, if we were helping people who are thinking of selling or thinking of buying better understand what they were getting from this side of things, right? Especially if those energy grades get put into real estate reports, it's going to raise the profile of the whole industry. Some other things we're interested in: municipalities who might be looking for a better partner for education if they feel they're missing the mark there, or maybe municipalities that are too small to have their own kind of expert services.
common.
Nonprofits. There's neighborhood associations that have sprung up, at least in Toronto, spontaneously. Just groups of homeowners trying to do this in their neighborhood and convince others to do it. We'd be happy to partner with them and just really be able to demonstrate the value more quickly on their own time, see the pricing. I think everyone's trying to get this information across. And part of the reason I built the tool set I did at initial launch is because it's everything I would have wanted together in one spot. Everything's out there, but it's cobbling it together from 15 different sources. And there's no one to phone if you have a question.
Oh, it is so frustrating from all of the other firsthand accounts that I've heard too. So I think that also going after those kind of ravenous early adopters or innovators that are they're already volunteering their time to try to solve this problem without you, that if you can get embedded within those groups and become a trusted element within them, I think that would be an amazing target for growth for now.
We'd love to, because we'd love to help that segment too. We love what they're doing and happy to help in any way we can.
So as we're wrapping up here, let's talk about the challenges of being an entrepreneur. What have been the biggest issues that you've had to overcome, either personal or to do with finding resources or getting access to, let's say, gated information that maybe only energy advisors have access to? Is there anything like that really has slowed down the progress of your initiative?
On the industry side, I find everyone in the industry is very friendly. I find that in climate in general, and going beyond just electrification, that it's a very supportive industry where everyone really is in it for very good reasons and trying to support one another and paying it forward. So it's been a really rewarding community to be a part of for that reason. And there's a lot out there about all this information, including a lot of reports on why people won't install heat pumps or electrify. I don't think I've ever been actually, in my personal experience, I've never been trying to build a business where there's so much amazing customer research already done in reports. It's like reports after reports, they all reinforce one another, saying there's all these problems. And it just boggles my mind that more people aren't doing what we're trying to do already. But there are several companies in the US and no one in Canada is trying to do the end-to-end part of it. People are trying to do different pieces, but I think the problem is that you really do need, for the homeowner, you need to take them through the whole process from the start to finish, or else there's so many pitfalls or so many places to fall down and get lost and frustrated and just get a piece of bad advice and say, okay, I give up. Other things that, were challenging, finding the right teammates, like a good co-founder, is definitely tough. I think it's always tough no matter what business you're going into, but I was really motivated to also have some initial teammates that were great on the building science side. And a lot of the people in the industry that are really good are very high demand and have their own jobs already. So just getting everything to line up on that side and finding a great candidate who was also ready for this at this stage in their life was challenging. And we're fortunate enough to find someone. And then just for the first while when you're going solo, just putting in the work day after day with no teammates or feedback or anything. It can be a bit lonely, the journey at the start. You have faith. I've done it before. You have faith that as soon as there's something to show people will respond to it and things will start growing. But it can be tough to motivate yourself from day to day at the very beginning of the journey when it's just you and the video game console is 5 feet away and you got no pressures from anyone else but yourself. So you just got to show up and put in the work every day to get to your initial milestone and believe that it's going to turn out once you get there.
That's some great advice for people that might want to take on that journey. But do you have any other advice that you'd be able to directly give to other aspiring, let's say, founders within the space that want to make a difference?
Yeah, definitely. Just whatever you want to do, there's probably not a good time to do it or start it. It'll probably never be a good time. So just start doing it and get involved in the community. If it's a topic you don't know a lot about, but you're really passionate and you see how it's going to align with your strengths as you get into it, just marinate in the space, learn people, get to know people. There are meetups for all sorts of climate related things and general entrepreneurial advice. I think a lot of people think that if you're not a Zuckerberg and you're not successful by 22, you're pretty much a flame out on the entrepreneurial side of tech. That's not true at all. I couldn't have started a startup at the age of 20. And I don't think I could have started this business until this year. And with everything I learned, finance it, I wasn't the CEO. So I find if you have aptitude, a really good way to learn is get into a company. It might fail. It's a good chance it'll fail. Most startups fail. But if you're not sure how to do a lot of the things, if you get in as like a co-founder who's maybe not the CEO, you can learn a lot by if you do well and you're part of that ride without having the ultimate pressure on your shoulders while still learning everything you could possibly learn about founding and running a startup and getting to understand the business landscape that surrounds it. Anyway, that's obviously there are some exceptional people who seem to be able to step into those shoes in their 20s and do amazing jobs. Don't stress it. I actually think that you will learn lots of things throughout your 30s and even into your 40s. And I think there's tons of successful people who didn't start their businesses until they were well into their career.
I would like to echo, though, like joining a startup and treating it like a learning experience and not treating it like, hey, this is going to be my, golden ticket to that equity payout at some point in the future. Because again, most startups fail. But in the process of watching the startup try to succeed, the exposure that you get to so many important concepts and skills of starting a business, running a business, trying to launch a product, that becomes invaluable. That is like a living MBA that then you can use down the line as you discuss. So I just, again, want to echo that advice to anybody that wants to build something in the space is to jump in and find something that you're personally connected to, that you're personally inspired about, and then connect with other people that have done it before, either if it's just calling them up for advice or joining them on the wild ride.
Yeah, it's true. You have to be prepared for sacrifice and be willing to put up with delayed gratification when you're going down that route. But even after the end of it, I think you might try it 3 or 4 times and maybe still not have the fortune of really joining a company that really took off. But I guarantee you, after doing that a few times, like you'll be able to get a job just about anywhere. You'll have such an incredible skill set at the end of all of that it'll be invaluable. And so I think for those who are okay to understand the risks and are okay with delayed gratification, I think the payoff is always worth it in the end, right? Even if it's a long journey to get there.
And I have one last question for you, which is a pretty deep question about balancing the requirements of a company that has started to be for profit and, let's say, a more altruistic, mission-driven approach. Because there's a lot of small companies, you start off small with large aspirations, but to stay in touch with that original vision and mission to make a difference, to really make a positive difference in the world, and keeping that as the core outcome instead of it just being profit as an outcome. Is that something that you've considered? Do you have a personal philosophy on how to balance those two desires?
Because we don't have any major outside investors yet. And everyone in the company is very aligned with the mission and very excited to contribute to it and grow to it. First of all, I think if you structure your business and the business model in a way that the mission benefits when the ecosystem benefits, like you don't necessarily have to have an imbalance between making money and delivering value, right? And I think if we're delivering value to everyone in our ecosystem, they'll be happy for what they're being charged. So they'll see the value in it and they'll understand. Obviously, not everyone's always going to be happy with everything, but generally speaking, I don't think there has to be a contradiction between making money and offering a service when you're providing value to all the parties involved. My motivation is to create products that are good for the planet, good for everyone involved, and everyone feels they're doing well. And the company will be making money as a result. That said, as you grow and you have investors and maybe some plans don't work out, right? Yes, best plans get waylaid sometimes. So I do have ambitions to make the company a benefit corp at some point.
Good to hear.
Yeah, definitely. I think the mission is core enough to this business. That is something we would like to accomplish. We're a little less busy just getting it off the ground and we have time to go through that process. We're definitely interested in turning into a benefit corp. And beyond that, the other time things can get a bit waylaid is much later on if the majority ownership changes or if the original founders bow out. And because then sometimes the original intent obviously gets lost. And you might have some people with different intent in there. If we are so lucky to ever get there with Julia, and I certainly hope we will be, and I think we will be, I'm in this for the long term. I'm not in it to turn around, sell it, and make a quick buck per se. So I'm certainly motivated to stick around and grow the company for a long time and make sure that mission and vision stay on track.
That is really great to hear. I really appreciate that approach. And I hope to be in the industry for a while as well. So hopefully I see you a decade down the line and we're both able to make an impact in the things that we're going after.
Oh, we'll be able to reminisce about how we had this interview at the very beginning.
Awesome. Let's wrap this up. Do you have any calls to action for any of the listeners if they want to learn more?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think for any HVAC in Canada, if you're knowledgeable about heat pumps and you see the same problems that we do in the industry for homeowners that are trying to approach this angle and make their homes more comfortable or energy efficient or whatever their motivation may be, please reach out. You can email me, paul@jouleia.com, JOULEIA.com, and reach out. We'd love to talk to you. And we hope to make our contractors and partners' lives easier as well, basically by making sure they don't have to do that initial sales visit or anything else and just lining things up for them and delivering them. Otherwise, I think you probably talk about it a lot, but I think heat pumps really are going to become increasingly popular. If it's still a part of your business as an HVAC contractor that you haven't fully approached yet, you're probably going to have to at some point sooner or later, right? Yeah. Anyway, I think that's it. Thanks so much for having me on, Ben. It was great talk.
It was great having you, and I wish you the best with Julia. I really hope it's successful and makes a big impact on the market, and probably talk again soon.
Amazing. Absolutely. Thanks, Ben.